When we think about thinking, we often imagine a single unified process, a rational voice in our heads, carefully weighing options. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there are two very different characters running the show? This was the revolutionary idea brought to the world by a psychologist named Daniel Kahneman. He wasn't a traditional economist, yet he won the Nobel Prize in economics. Why? Because he looked under the hood of human decision-making and found something startling. He found a hidden world of intuition, emotion, and automatic judgments that secretly guide almost everything we do. It's a world that operates in the blink of an eye, long before our conscious mind ever gets a chance to catch up. Kahneman called these two characters System 1 and System 2. Think of System 1 as your gut reaction. It's the part of your brain that works effortlessly, automatically, and incredibly fast. It's the hero of the story, but also the source of many of our mistakes. When you see a picture of an angry face, you don't have to think about it, you just know. When you hear a loud, unexpected noise, you flinch without a second thought. That's System 1. It drives your car on a familiar road, answers the question, what is 2 plus 2, and gets a bad feeling about a sketchy-looking alleyway. It is the silent, powerful engine that keeps our daily lives moving smoothly, operating in the background without any conscious supervision. Then there is System 2. This is the mind we are more familiar with. It is slow, deliberate, and requires real effort. It's the voice you use when you have to solve a complex math problem, like 17 times 24. You can't just guess, you have to focus, follow steps, and burn mental energy. System 2 is what you engage when you need to fill out a tax form, compare two different smartphones for a purchase, or learn the rules of a new board game. It is lazy though. It doesn't like to work unless it absolutely has to. So, most of the time, System 2 is happy to let the fast, impulsive System 1 take the lead, trusting its quick judgments without double-checking the facts. The dance between these two systems is the story of our minds. System 1 generates constant suggestions for System 2, feelings, intuitions, intentions, and impressions. If everything seems normal, System 2 just accepts them. You see a delicious-looking cake and your System 1 says, "Eat it." Most of the time, System 2 just says, "Okay." It's only when things get difficult or surprising that System 2 wakes up and takes control. This division of labor is highly efficient. It allows us to navigate a complex world with minimal effort. But the problem, as Kahneman showed, is that our fast, intuitive System 1 has a whole collection of biases and blind spots that can lead us astray in very predictable ways. Our brains are lazy. Not in a bad way, but in an efficient way. To save energy, System 1 relies on a set of mental shortcuts or heuristics. These are simple rules of thumb that help us make quick judgments without having to think too hard. For the most part, they work beautifully. If you're asked whether there are more words that start with the letter K or have K as the third letter, you'll probably say the first. Why? Because it's much easier to think of words that start with K, like kitchen, kite, or koala. This is the availability heuristic. If something comes to mind easily, we assume it's more common or important. It's a good shortcut, but it's often wrong. This brings us to the predictable errors or cognitive biases that these shortcuts create. One of the most powerful is the anchoring bias. The first piece of information we receive about something heavily influences our subsequent judgments. If a salesperson first shows you a watch for $10,000, the next watch they show you for $1,000 suddenly seems like a fantastic bargain. That initial $10,000 number became an anchor, warping your perception of value. This happens all the time in negotiations, from buying a car to setting a salary. The first number thrown out sets the stage for the entire conversation, whether it's logical or not. We get stuck on it. Another powerful bias is the representativeness heuristic. We tend to judge situations based on how much they resemble a stereotype or a familiar pattern. Kahneman gave a famous example. A person named Steve is described as shy, withdrawn, and helpful, with a passion for order and detail. Is Steve more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? Most people say librarian because the description fits our stereotype of one. But statistically, there are far more farmers than male librarians. We ignore the basic probabilities and go with the story that feels right. Our gut tells us one thing, but the facts point in a completely different direction. Then there's the substitution bias. When faced with a hard question, our brain often secretly substitutes it with an easier one and answers that instead. Imagine a politician is asked, "How effective will your complex economic policy be to fight inflation?" That's a very difficult question, so their brain might swap it for an easier one. How do I feel about this policy right now? If they feel confident and positive, they will deliver a confident and positive answer about its effectiveness, even without analyzing the hard data. We do this constantly. We swap, how happy are you with your life? For what is my mood right now? And let the simple answer guide the complex one. One of the most profound insights from Kahneman's work is just how much we trust ourselves even when we shouldn't. We suffer from a powerful overconfidence bias. We believe we know more than we actually do. Think about a major project at work. How often does it get finished on time and on budget? Almost never. This is called the planning fallacy. We make plans based on a best-case scenario, underestimating the risks, delays, and unexpected problems that will inevitably pop up. We focus on our own skills and intentions, and we completely ignore the statistics of similar projects that have failed or taken much longer. We are blind to the unknown unknowns. This overconfidence is a direct product of System 1. Our intuitive mind creates a coherent story that makes sense to us, and we trust it. We filter out the evidence that contradicts our beliefs. Experts are especially prone to this. An expert stock picker who makes a few good calls starts to believe they have a special talent, a hot hand, when it might just be luck. They build a narrative of their own genius. But Kahneman's research showed that in many fields, the predictions of so-called experts were no better than random chance. Their confidence, however, was sky high. We prefer confident-sounding advice, even if it's baseless, over uncertain but more realistic assessments. This leads us to another core idea, prospect theory. It's a simple but powerful concept that explains how we feel about risk. For most of us, the pain of losing something is about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the exact same thing. If you find $100 on the street, you'll feel pretty good. But if you lose $100 from your wallet, you'll feel absolutely terrible. This is known as loss aversion. We are wired to avoid losses more than we are to seek gains. This explains why investors will often hold on to a losing stock for far too long, hoping it will recover, because selling it would mean making the loss real and painful. The way a choice is presented or framed can completely change our decision because of this fear of loss. Imagine a public health crisis where 600 people are at risk. You are offered two programs. Program A will save 200 lives. Program B has a 1/3 probability that 600 people will be saved and a 2/3 probability that no one will be saved. Most people choose Program A. It's the safe bet. Now consider a different framing. In Program C, 400 people will die. In Program D, there is a 1/3 probability that nobody will die, and a 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. Here, most people choose Program D, the risky option. The outcomes are identical, but framing the choice in terms of losses, people dying, makes us gamble to avoid that certain loss. Kahneman asks us to consider one final mind-bending idea. You are not one self, but two. There is the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self is the part of you that lives in the present moment. It's the one that feels the cold sting of the water as you jump into a pool, the boredom of a long meeting, or the simple joy of eating a good meal. This self lives a life that is a continuous stream of moments, each with its own feeling. It is the one that answers the question, does it hurt now? This self lives in the immediate reality of our senses and emotions, processing life as it happens, second by second. The remembering self, however, is the one that keeps score. It's the storyteller in your head. It doesn't remember every moment of an experience. Instead, it creates a summary based on a few key highlights, particularly the peak moment, the most intense point, and the end. This is known as the peak end rule. A vacation could be wonderful for 2 weeks, but if the last day is ruined by a stressful flight delay, your remembering self will likely paint the entire trip with a negative brush. The duration of the experience, how long the good or bad parts lasted, is almost completely ignored. This is called duration neglect. This creates a strange conflict within us. The remembering self is the one that makes our decisions for the future. When we decide where to go on our next vacation, we consult the memories created by the remembering self, not the complete record of the experiencing self. We might choose to repeat an experience that was mostly unpleasant but had a fantastic ending, over one that was consistently pleasant but ended on a neutral note. We are essentially choosing to subject our future experiencing self to something based on the flawed, edited story created by our remembering self. We are choosing memories over experiences. So why does all of this matter? Understanding these two systems, these biases, and these two selves is not about eliminating our flaws. We can't simply turn off system one, but we can learn to recognize the situations where it is most likely to lead us astray. We can learn to slow down, to ask ourselves, is this an anchor talking? Am I substituting an easy question for a hard one? Am I being overconfident? By understanding the secret architecture of our minds, we can learn to be more deliberate, question our own intuitions, and ultimately, make wiser and happier choices for both the self that lives in the moment and the one that tells the story of our lives.